From Michigan Public, this is It's Just Politics. I'm Zoe Clark.
And I'm Rick Pluta.
We are now 2 months away from the special election that will determine the functional makeup of the state Senate.
The 35th Senate District election is an important race that has, the political class in Lansing wondering what comes next.
For more, let's turn to WCMU's AJ Jones, who's been closely covering the race between Republican Jason Tunney, Democrat Chedrick Green, and Libertarian Allie Sleds. AJ, hi.
Hi, AJ.
Hey, happy to talk to you guys again.
So remind us quickly why this special election is so special to how Lansing is going to operate for the final 8 months of the year.
Well, Zoe, the Michigan Democrats have a one-seat majority in the state Senate. It's currently sitting at 19 to 18. So if the Democrat in this race wins, the top chamber will be Democratic Party controlled for the remainder of Gretchen Whitmer's term. She's obviously term limited. She'll be leaving office next year. If the Republican Party wins, the chamber is tied, and the current Lieutenant Governor, Garland Gilchrist, is the tie-breaking vote. Now, this matters especially in the short term because, as you know, budget season is basically just around the corner. And as we saw from the last session, every vote counts, especially as the state is facing a potential $1 billion budget shortfall.
So, AJ, remind us of who these three candidates are. Let's start with Chedrick Green.
So Green is a 30-year Marine, retired Marine. He is a Saginaw Fire captain. He's currently still working with the Saginaw Fire Department. He worked in Representative Krista McDonald-Rivet's office when Krista McDonald-Rivet was the state senator. She was the previous state senator here. And Green won fairly commandingly in a competitive primary. He's been talking a lot about affordability. Unionization has come up quite a bit in his campaign stumps. He's talked about increasing school funding as well. His opponent is Jason Tunney, Republican. Tunney is a former prosecuting attorney in Saginaw County. He's also a businessman, and he won a fairly slim victory in his primary. Tunney is running a pretty conservative campaign. He's been drilling hard into tax cuts, public safety funding, pro-business deregulation, and improving the state's poor educational metrics. He's been really hammering home the third grade reading scores in particular. Allie Sleds is the Libertarian in this race. She was nominated by the Libertarian Party a few months ago. She is from Midland. She's pursuing a master's degree, and she's really trying to carve out this lane of being very sort of middle ground focused, really emphasizing the need for lower taxes. She told WCMU, and I'm quoting her, "I'm not expecting to win," but she hopes to get the message out about the Libertarian Party, really trying to drum up support for the party, especially for future elections.
Okay. So Tunney and Green debated last week at Saginaw Valley State University. What did we hear from them that's noteworthy?
I think at that forum, you got a really good contrast on Tunney and Green in terms of just their politics and their style. Like I mentioned, Tunney is a lawyer, and you could really tell. He got very into the specifics of state law and policy and very organized. Green, on the other hand, was a lot more broad, and he kind of reiterated the need for affordability. That was something that felt like it came up in more questions than it didn't. I think the most interesting exchange of the night, and where you really got a contrast on these two particular candidates, was on gun control. Chedrick Green said, when asked, that he supported red flag laws. Red flag laws, if you're deemed to be a threat to yourself or others via court order, police can take your guns away from you. This is what Green said about it.
I believe that if you are a menace to the society, and it is deemed that way, that you should temporarily have your guns replaced.
To which Jason Tunney responded with this.
But it sounded like Mr. Green said that he wants to, from Lansing, tell you how you keep your guns in your house, in your private property.
Tunney went on to argue that red flag laws violate not only the federal constitution, but also the state constitution, guaranteeing the right to bear arms. Green reiterated that he was supporting how he described it as common sense gun control, and being a Marine and, teaching people how to use guns safely was something he brought up in his exchange. So that was really, I think, a good microcosm of how the night went.
We should note the candidates have been getting some big names to act as surrogates for them on the campaign trail. Fill us in.
So on the 19th of March, Winnie Brinks and Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who ran for president back in 2020, he also served as the Secretary of Transportation during the Biden years. Both of them stumped at a coffee shop in Midland for Chedrick. And while he was there, Mayor Pete emphasized the need to elect Democrats
who understand that when it comes to the price of the things you buy at the store, we should be finding ways to make it more affordable instead of putting tariffs on that drive that cost even higher.
Once again, just sort of hammering on affordability. That's been a very consistent theme of their campaign. Later that night, Midland Republican Representative Bill G. Schuette spoke for Jason Tunney at an event hall, also in Midland. Schuette made light of the need for Republicans to get out. He said that, there's not a lot of people that aren't even aware that there's an election happening because it's a special election in a midterm year. He also made reference to the fact that the district has not had a state senator in over a year. That's a big sticking point, both for just residents of the area in general, but for conservatives in particular. Whitmer, a Democrat, had the longest wait time to call an election of her tenure as governor. And this is what Schuette had to say about it.
And let me tell you what, not only is that wrong, not only have you been deprived of your constitutional rights in Lansing, but I got to tell you folks, I need some help.
So, AJ, since this is one of the few political races on the ballot right now, is there any sense that somehow this is a harbinger event, a way of sort of reading the political tea leaves as to what might happen in other parts of the state?
I think it's a good bellwether, not just for the state, but honestly for the entire country, because this area is really a purple district in many ways. Saginaw County in particular is a state that voted for Trump and then voted for Biden in 2020 and then voted for Trump again back in 2024. In this district, looking at the margins across the three presidential elections, they're pretty close across the district. And this district during the last election is a district that sent a Democrat, Kristen McDonald-Rivet, to the United States House of Representatives, but also a district that Trump did fairly well in. Mm-hmm. So this district is often looked at as a real bellwether for how really the entire state goes. It's a district where there's a lot of Democrats and a very well-organized collection of conservatives. This is also, frankly, the only real data point we're going to have before the November midterm. So if you're looking at where the state's going to go, this is one of the more purple areas in the district that has a fairly sizable population. There's more than 250,000 people that live here. So, yeah, I think that I'm also really looking at this as where is the Saginaw Bay region going to go? That might say a lot about where the whole state goes later this year.
And AJ, finally, what are you going to be watching for over the next weeks before this May 4th election?
I'm really fixated on voter issues, and I had conversations with Democrats and Republicans at the forum. And one thing I noticed is that conservatives are very animated by local issues. And I think that sort of speaks to the Tunney campaign. He's talking about local control, right? Your localities, your municipalities should have control over things like data centers, solar and wind. That's something that came up a lot talking to conservative voters. And taxes, the desire to see the state's tax rate go down. That's something Tunney's been saying a lot. There are states in this area that have lower tax rates, and as Tunney explains it, have better economic outcomes. And Democratic voters are also sort of fixated on local issues, but one thing I've noticed is that Democratic voters are, one, fairly engaged, and one thing that came up is that they're really upset about the state of the country, and that sort of speaks to the Green campaign, hammering down on affordability, hammering down on the state of the economy. The war in Iran came up. Mayor Pete was very critical of it at the event. So I think that, conservatives and Democrats are very sort of fixated kind of in different places. As for the results, Democrats are pretty optimistic. There were more voters in the Democratic primary a few months ago than there were Republicans. We at WCMU have internal GOP data that says that their pathway to victory is slim. And, that data says if all goes well from them turnout-wise, hypothetically, they'd win by less than 500 votes. That hasn't deterred Jason Tunney. He told me that he's knocking on thousands of doors, and he said that he would not be outworked, sort of paraphrasing him there. Saginaw County is also the only county out of the three that is allowing early voting, which has also been kind of a sticking point. It'd be interesting to see if that has any impact.
It certainly will.
And that is AJ Jones, reporter at WCMU, keeping an eye on Michigan's special 35th Senate District election. AJ, thanks so much.
Thanks, AJ.
Thank you.
And that is It's Just Politics for today. I'm Zoe Clark.
And I'm Rick Pluta.
Let's talk again next week.